When night falls over the heart of London, the tower transforms. It's no longer just a tourist attraction. It becomes a silent witness to centuries of executions, betrayals, and torture. Locals say, if you walk near its walls at midnight, you don't just feel the chill of the wind, you feel the chill of its history. The Tower of London isn't merely a castle. It's a graveyard of secrets. Hundreds died heroism in public spectacle, others in agonizing silence deep in the dungeons. But three stories echoed the loudest in its haunted halls, each one etched into its very stone. It begins with Anne Boleyn, the most famous of Henry VIII's queens. She was brought here in May 1536, accused of adultery and treason. But the truth, many historians believe, she was merely a victim of the king's ruthless desire for a son and his obsession with Jane Seymour. Anne knew her fate long before the blade touched her neck, and they say she walks the tower still. Guards have reported seeing her near the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her body lies. She's often described wearing a shimmering white gown, her face sorrowful but calm. But the most chilling detail, she carries her head tucked under her arm. One guard swore that, late one night, he heard footsteps approaching in the dark corridor. Turning, he saw her figure gliding silently. He dropped his lantern and fled, never returning to that post. Then there's the tale of the two princes. Edward V and his younger brother Richard, mere children, were locked in the tower in 1483 by their uncle, Richard III. They were last seen alive playing in the gardens. Their fate remains a mystery until the 1600s, when workers discovered two small skeletons hidden under a staircase. The whispers began. The boys had been smothered in their sleep. Visitors today swear they've seen them, still in their night clothes, silently holding hands as they wander the halls. Sometimes, they're heard giggling faintly. Other times, their cries echo through the corridors, piercing the darkness. One yeoman warder admitted that, while on his rounds, he saw two shadowy figures dart past him and vanish into the bloody tower. But perhaps the most unnerving spirit belongs to Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. She was only 16 when she was executed here. Witnesses say her apparition drifts along the battlements, her long gown trailing behind her, her face pale and mournful. Once, a guard claimed he felt a cold hand grip his shoulder as he stood watch near the Green Tower. When he turned, no one was there. Riot. The imprint of fingers remained on his skin. What makes these hauntings terrifying isn't just the sightings. It's the heaviness. People describe feeling watched, like unseen eyes are following them through every hallway. Tourists often feel sudden drops in temperature or hear faint whispers in empty chambers. One visitor even fainted in the White Tower after seeing what she swore was a headless woman walk through the wall. Why do they remain? Perhaps their deaths were too violent, their spirits too restless. Perhaps the tower is a cage, not just for prisoners but for their souls. As midnight strikes and the city sleeps, the tower awakens. Guards still patrol its grounds, but many avoid the dungeons after dark. They've learned that some doors creak open by themselves, and some cries don't come from the living. If you ever visit the Tower of London, remember this: the stone walls remember everything, every scream, every plea, every drop of blood spilled, and if you listen closely, they just might share those memories with you. Perched in the quiet town of Weston, West Virginia, lies a fortress of pain, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. From the outside, its sprawling Gothic architecture could almost pass for beautiful, but step inside, and beauty fades fast. This place doesn't just hold history. It holds screams. When it opened in 1864, the asylum was meant to house 250 patients. It was designed with kindness in mind, using sunlight, fresh air, and a belief that the mentally ill deserved care, not chains. But the dream rotted quickly. By the 1950s, over 2,400 patients were crammed inside. Hallways overflowed with the forgotten, the disturbed, and the abandoned. And that's when the darkness truly took root. Doctors experimented with treatments that today would be called torture. Electroshock therapy fried minds more than it healed them. Ice baths plunged patients into hypothermic shock. And then came lobotomies, hundreds of them. done by the infamous Dr. Walter Freeman, who performed his gruesome ice-pick lobotomy right in these halls. Most patients never left. Those who did weren't the same. It's said the walls remember. Visitors today swear they hear the faint hum of electroshock machines, long dismantled. Tour guides often recount stories of sudden screams echoing from empty rooms. Some say these are the voices of patients who died here, their agony imprinted forever into the stone. One of the most infamous spirits is Ruth, a patient who hated men. Even in death, her anger hasn't softened. Paranormal investigators claim to have felt scratching on their arms or sudden pushes while exploring the room believed to be hers. Male visitors, in particular, describe a deep, suffocating dread, like Ruth wants them out. Then there's Lily. Her story breaks hearts. Lily was a little girl who supposedly grew up inside these walls, abandoned by her family. She died young, but her laughter still dances through the asylum. Investigators bring toys, like balls or music boxes, and they often move on their own. One team swore they heard a tiny voice whisper, "Play with me," right before their flashlight flickered off. But not all spirits are as playful. Some are angry, dark, dangerous. On the 4th floor, people talk about an entity known only as the Creeper. Unlike the human ghosts who roam these halls, the Creeper isn't believed to be from this world. Witnesses describe it as a shadow that crawls on walls, sometimes dropping to the floor in unnatural, animal-like movements. Its presence brings an unbearable sense of dread, a primal fear that makes grown adults flee without explanation. The asylum's Civil War history only adds to its torment. During the war, Union soldiers took over the partially built facility, turning it into a barracks and hospital. Many died here, their blood seeping into the foundation long before the first patient arrived. Some believe their restless souls still walk the grounds, lost between battlefields and madness. In 1994, the asylum closed its doors for good. By then, it was a shell of horrors, with peeling paint, rusted beds, and hallways that seemed to whisper as you passed. But death didn't leave when the last patient did. Today, it's one of America's most haunted destinations. Ghost hunters flock here, eager to capture the voices on EVP recorders or glimpse figures moving through the shadows. One investigator claimed he saw a man in hospital clothes shuffle down the corridor, only to vanish when approached. Another swore that as she walked through the lobotomy ward, an invisible hand brushed her hair back from her face. Perhaps the most chilling encounters happen in the morgue. The air there is thick, heavy, and cold, as if the dead are still watching. One former caretaker recounted locking up for the night when he heard gurneys rolling across the tile floor. He was alone. What keeps them here? Is it the cruelty they endured? The unthinkable experiments? Or maybe the asylum itself has become a prison for their souls, trapping them in an endless loop of suffering. One thing is certain, the asylum doesn't forgive trespassers. Paranormal teams have reported leaving with scratches on their arms, bruises they couldn't explain, and feelings of despair that lingered for weeks. Some even vowed never to return. If you dare to visit, you'll walk through the same halls where thousands lived their final days in terror. You might hear Lily's giggle. You might feel Ruth's rage, or worse, you might meet the Creeper. So when the sun sets over Weston and darkness swallows the asylum, remember this is no abandoned building. It's alive in ways you can't understand. And some doors, once opened, should never be closed again. At the base of Japan's majestic Mount Fuji lies Aokigahara, a forest so dense that sunlight struggles to reach the ground. It's quiet here, eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes your own breathing feel too loud. But if you stand still long enough, you'll notice something unsettling. This forest isn't empty. It's watching you. Locals call it Jukai, the Sea of Trees, but the world knows it by another name, the Suicide Forest. For decades, people have come here not to hike or explore, but to disappear. It's said that more than 500 souls have taken their final steps under its towering trees. Some believe they chose this forest because of its haunting beauty. Others believe it's because Aokigahara whispers to them. The stories begin with the Yurei spirits from Japanese folklore, said to be born from deep sorrow or rage. They say the Yurei in Aokigahara are different. These are not peaceful ghosts. They are restless, vengeful, and desperate to lure others into sharing their fate. Hikers who venture off the main trails often report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as though unseen hands are pulling them deeper into the woods. Some say they've seen pale figures dressed in white kimonos, traditional funeral attire, floating between the trees. Others speak of hearing faint whispers calling their name, only to find no one there. And then there's the compass problem. Aokigahara is rich with magnetic iron in its soil, and it's said to interfere with compasses and GPS. But for those who believe in the supernatural, this is no mere coincidence. They claim the forest itself disorients you, leading you away from the trails, away from safety and toward its heart, where the Yurei roam. One story stands out. In 2002, a man searching for his missing brother ventured deep into the forest. He followed colored tape tied to trees markers left by visitors who feared getting lost. The deeper he went, the stranger things became. He heard footsteps trailing behind him, but when he turned, only trees stared back. Then he found it, an abandoned tent, untouched by time, surrounded by personal belongings, shoes, photographs, and a rope swinging gently from a branch. He swore he heard breathing nearby, heavy and raspy. Terrified, he ran, but he never found his brother. Hikers often stumble upon these makeshift camps, evidence of those who came to the forest but weren't ready to leave right away. These camps are eerie snapshots of final days, a journal left open mid-sentence, a backpack with snacks still inside, a flashlight with dead batteries. They're reminders that the forest is filled with ghosts long before anyone dies there. Some visitors claim they've seen shadowy figures following them, only for those figures to vanish when approached. Others describe feeling hands tugging at their clothes, pulling them off the trails. Paranormal investigators have captured strange recordings, whispers in Japanese, low humming, and once, a voice pleading, "Don't leave me." But Aokigahara's darkness isn't just paranormal, it's psychological. Experts say the oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of a branch or distant animal call, can play tricks on the mind. Many who enter with clear intentions to return find themselves gripped by despair. Some even describe feeling as though the forest itself wants them to stay. And yet, in this sea of sorrow, there are also signs of hope. Volunteers regularly patrol the area, leaving bright signs with messages like, "Your life is precious. Think of your family." But these signs only add to the haunting feeling, stark reminders of how many come here with no plan to leave. The forest has become infamous worldwide, drawing adventurers, thrill-seekers, and ghost hunters. But those who've been there warn that this isn't a place for curiosity. It's sacred, it's heavy, it changes you. One traveler shared her story online. She hiked into Aokigahara with friends, sticking to the marked path. But halfway through, she felt drawn to a narrow, unmarked trail. "It felt like someone was calling me," she wrote. Against her friends' protests, she walked a few steps in until she heard sobbing, faint but unmistakable. Her friends didn't hear it. They grabbed her arm, pulling her back to the main trail. She swore if they hadn't, she wouldn't have returned. Is it the Yurei? Is it the forest itself? Or is it the lingering sorrow of countless souls that never found peace? When the mist rolls through Aokigahara and the trees begin to sway, the silence becomes deafening. It feels alive. And perhaps it is. If you ever visit, follow the trail markers. Don't wander. And if you hear the forest whisper your name, whatever you do, don't answer. Nestled in the Loire Valley of France, the Château de Brissac stands like a fairy tale castle. Its towering spires and elegant halls make it one of the grandest chateaux in the region. But step inside after dark, and the fairy tale turns into a Gothic nightmare. This isn't just a home of kings and dukes. It's a resting place for a restless soul, one that has haunted its walls for centuries. Her name was Charlotte de Breze, though most who know her story call her simply La Dame Verte, the Lady in Green. Her tale begins in the late 15th century when she married Jacques de Breze, a wealthy nobleman. But theirs was no happy union. Jacques was consumed by jealousy, suspecting Charlotte of an affair with one of his huntsmen. One night, Jacques' suspicions became unbearable. He followed her to a secluded room in the château and caught her with her lover. Blinded by rage, Jacques murdered them both in cold blood. The brutality of the crime was so severe that locals say it cursed the château forever. Charlotte's body was buried, but her soul never left. Visitors describe seeing her wandering the corridors in a green dress, her face twisted and ghastly, as though still frozen in the terror of her final moments. Some say her ghostly figure appears near the tower where she was killed, moving silently through the rooms, vanishing when approached. But her most horrifying feature isn't her dress. It's her face, or what's left of it. Witnesses claim her spectral visage has gaping holes where her eyes and nose should be, leaving only a skeletal grin. Residents of the château, including members of the Brissac family who still live there, admit they've seen her. They speak of late-night moaning echoing through the halls and the sound of soft footsteps pacing above them when no one is there. Guests have reported waking in the dead of night to the feeling of being watched, only to see a shadowy figure in green standing at the foot of their bed. But Charlotte doesn't always stay silent. Some say they've heard her whispering softly in the dark, her voice faint and chilling, as if pleading for forgiveness. Others claim she lets out blood-curdling screams that rattle through the stone corridors, especially on stormy nights. One of the most terrifying encounters happened to a group of paranormal investigators who stayed overnight in the château. While exploring the tower room, their cameras malfunctioned, batteries draining instantly. Then they heard it, a low, mournful wail, followed by the sharp slam of a door. When they reviewed their audio, they found a whisper in French. Pourquoi suis-je ici? Why am I here? The lady in green is more than a ghost. She's a reminder of betrayal, rage, and the pain of a violent death. And she's not the only soul said to linger in the château. Staff members have reported shadowy figures moving through the wine cellar and sudden drops in temperature in rooms that were once used as dungeons. Even those who don't believe in ghosts admit that the château has a presence. Guests describe an unshakable heaviness, as if the walls themselves are alive, remembering centuries of bloodshed and sorrow. Yet, despite its haunted reputation, the Château de Brissac remains open to visitors. You can walk its grand halls, marvel at its lavish, and perhaps, if you're unlucky, catch a glimpse of Charlotte yourself. But those who've seen her warn of one thing: never look too closely into her face. What you'll see will stay with you long after you've left. In the small town of Junee, New South Wales, stands a grand Victorian mansion with an elegant balcony and sprawling gardens. To the untrained eye, Monte Cristo Homestead could pass for a beautiful relic of Australia's colonial past. But locals know better. They call it Australia's most haunted house, a place where tragedy and death carve deep scars that refuse to heal. It all began in 1885, when Christopher Crawley, a wealthy landowner, built the homestead for his family. At first it was a dream, a symbol of status and success. But as the years passed, the house became a stage for a series of horrific events. Death didn't just visit Monte Cristo. It moved in. The most infamous tragedy is that of Mrs. Crawley herself. After her husband's death, she became a recluse, shutting herself inside the homestead for over 2 decades. She spent most of her time reading the Bible and obsessively policing the house, rarely interacting with the outside world. Locals believed her grief twisted into something darker. When she died, they said her spirit refused to leave. Visitors often claimed to feel her presence in the upstairs rooms, where she spent most of her time. Many report sudden chills, the smell of old perfume, or an overwhelming sense of being judged. Some even claim they've seen her, a stern woman in a black Victorian dress, standing silently in the hallways, glaring as if to say, "You don't belong here." But Mrs. Crawley isn't the only ghost. There's a stable boy, whose story still makes locals shudder. He was only a young boy when, for reasons lost to time, he was chained in the stable and left to die. They say his screams echoed across the property, but no one came to save him. Today, visitors to the stables report hearing faint crying, and some have felt a small hand grab. There's cold, desperate, and fleeting. Then there's the maid. Legend has it, she fell, or was pushed, from the balcony, to her death. Guests who stay overnight sometimes wake to the sound of hurried footsteps running across the balcony, followed by a chilling thud, as though the past is replaying itself over and over. Even more disturbing is the tale of Harold Steele, the caretaker's son, born with a disability. Harold was locked away in the Homestead's outhouse for decades. Locals say he was treated more like an animal than a child. When he died, his suffering didn't end. Investigators claim Harold's presence is one of the strongest in the house, often manifesting as loud banging on doors or guttural growls that rattled the air. And then there's the most unnerving story of all, the pregnant servants. They say she was murdered by a stable hand who burned her alive in an act of twisted revenge. Guests have reported hearing her screams in the night, a chilling reminder of a death too horrific to forget. The house itself feels alive. Visitors often speak of an oppressive energy, like the walls are closing in on them. Electronics fail without explanation. Cold spots appear in warm rooms, and some people leave with scratches or bruises they can't explain. One paranormal team swore they saw a shadow figure dart across the main hallway during their investigation. Another described hearing a woman's voice whisper in their ear, though no one else was in the room. Even skeptics admit the homestead carries an aura they can't quite explain. Monte Cristo isn't just haunted by its tragedies, it's haunted by its isolation. Those who step inside say it's like the house wants to keep you there, trapping you in its sorrow. The current owners, who live on site, acknowledge the hauntings, but don't shy away from them. They open the house for ghost tours, inviting the brave to walk its cursed halls. But many who enter don't stay long. The whispers, the footsteps, the icy touches, they're too much. Monte Cristo Homestead isn't just a house. It's a mausoleum for the restless. And if you're lucky or unlucky enough to visit, you might meet them yourself. But a word of warning: the ghosts of Monte Cristo aren't just part of its history. They're part of its present. And they're waiting.